Welcome back to NewsNation Now. As we cover the news on President Biden, we also have news coming in this afternoon on former President Trump, as Mr. Trump's lawyers moved to overturn his conviction of the New York hush money trial based on the Supreme Court's decision to expand presidential immunity. Now, the sentencing for a phase of that trial has indeed officially been postponed. The New York court weighing whether the Supreme Court decision shielding presidents from criminal prosecution for official acts means the guilty verdict should be thrown out. Now, you'll remember Trump was set to be sentenced next Thursday. They've moved it. They just made the announcement official. We heard earlier it might happen. Now it's official. September 18th, 10 a.m. September 18th is what they're now telling us. Joining us here in New York is Liz Holtzman, a former Democratic Congresswoman from this great state. Now, when we have this conversation, we should also note she served on the House Judiciary Committee during Watergate. Voted to impeach President Nixon back then, was an outspoken critic of his decision, of the decision to pardon him. Welcome. It's great to have you. I think it's great to have
be with you.
Perspective in times like this. People get crazy about things. So
right.
On the Trump sentencing, and then I do want to ask you about President Biden. You were telling me you came into the Congress same year as then Senator Biden way back when. On the Trump sentencing, they've moved the date. Your kind of thoughts on this? There's a headline from The Hill. I thought it was interesting. John Dean says Nixon would have survived Watergate under this immunity ruling. You know, what do you think?
Oh, well, first of all, I think it's appropriate to give former President Trump the opportunity to make his case that the Supreme Court decision should void his conviction. I don't think that will happen. I don't think it should happen. But it allows me to say that I think what the Supreme Court has done is outrageous. I mean, when we were created as a nation, when the founders, and I had to study this getting ready for the impeachment process against Nixon, when the founders met in Philadelphia, they did not want a king. A king could not be prosecuted. The king was above the law. He couldn't violate any criminal law. We couldn't have, there would have been, might have been an impeachment, but there certainly could never have been a prosecution of Richard Nixon, and maybe not even of his aides, because what Nixon was doing was using the official powers of his office to cover up criminality. Let me just give you one example.
Sure.
The central example, and what caused his downfall, was a couple of days after the Watergate break-in by his campaign people. Nixon had his top aide call the CIA. Okay, so it's a top aide sitting in the Oval Office calling the CIA, presidential powers, official powers, to stop the investigation of the FBI. The claim was that it was going to interfere with national security. Of course, it was a lie. But these are within the central powers of a president to tell the CIA to get the FBI to stop the investigation. That was a cover-up. It was part of a cover-up. The people who engaged in it were prosecuted, were sent to prison. Nixon was named an unindicted co-conspirator in connection with that. They would have, the grand jury would have returned an indictment, except he was a sitting president. So how do we come now to a point where Richard Nixon couldn't have been prosecuted, where those wouldn't be considered crimes, where a president could have immunity? It's crazy and it's wrong. It leads us to dictatorship. It takes us back to the days of the monarchy.
It sounds a lot like what Sonia Sotomayor, the Justice of the Supreme Court, was saying, to your point about, you know, no kings here.
Right. We couldn't even have investigated the pardon.
Right.
There was a question about whether there was a deal for the pardon, whether the pardon itself was void. We couldn't have, who knows what would have happened.
What about for Trump, though? I mean, this is a different situation. I don't know if these are official acts that he's been accused of.
With regard to the hush money payment?
Yeah.
Well, the only official act is maybe he was sitting at the Resolute desk with a U.S. government-supplied pen.
Right.
Signing the checks.
But to be serious,
aside from that, no.
Define official acts, right? That's going to be the big thing.
Well, the issue shouldn't be what's an official act. The issue should be what's his responsibility as president.
Right.
If a president takes a bribe, let's say Trump meets with Putin and says, hey, Putin, I'm going to pull out of NATO and I'm not going to give any more aid to Ukraine, but you got to build me a few buildings. That's using his central powers.
So you'd be immune from that. I mean, that's what
he'd be immune from prosecution. How could you ever prosecute a president for treason?
Isn't it amazing? I mean, that's what Sotomayor was arguing. It literally said that if you take a bribe, if you order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate someone, you're immune. I mean, there's going to be challenges to this in other courts. It'll probably come back up again.
Well,
right?
it should come up. I mean, maybe. And the other maybe if the composition of the court changes, and that's what's really critical in this presidential race.
Yes.
If Trump is reelected, we're going to get more Clarence Thomases, more Kavanaughs, more John Roberts, more of the people who want to create a king in America, which is something that was never to be had.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.